Hello and welcome back. Here comes another edition of Sports and Then Some. I'm Paul with my 16-year-old son / malcontent Carson.
Yeah.
Say hello.
Hello.
Listener counts. This is our 5th podcast. Listener counts a bit low. Like as in it's just us two listening to some of these. But this was all started with two things in mind. First, to give Carson some practice at doing something related to sports media since he's looking to study that in college. And then also to give us both a forum to bitch and laugh about sports, pop culture, each other, so on.
Yeah.
So let's roll, bitches. Carson, you have the opening drive.
I feel like I've kind of talked about the same thing over and over again for opening drive. So I think
how
I might as well just go with it.
interesting. Go ahead.
I think I might as well go with the same thing again about how all these false promises about when sports are coming back and things of the sort. Like, like today there was a report, this morning there was a report about how player reps were texting all the players in the league about if they wanted the season to resume or not.
Which league are you talking about?
The NBA.
Okay.
And, but then it turns out that report was fake and they weren't actually texting. But then there was an NBA, like a call between a bunch of NBA superstars. And also, I want to know how much I'd have to pay to get on to the next one that happens with all those. I want to know who's on there first, and then we'll talk about price. But yeah, I don't know. I'm tired of the false promises because they really have no clue when it's coming back. I mean, the Arizona governor today said that sports can come back as soon as this Friday, but he has to get approval from the leagues. I don't know why he's saying that before getting any sort of confirmation from any of the major sports leagues. I don't know. That's pretty much it.
Okay. That's all right. So I'm going to go sports with my rant too. And it's not a topic that's obviously been in the news a ton lately. But I have a feeling that as we get back into some things, especially when we get into the NFL, it's going to come up like it does all the time. And that is someone that I don't dislike. I don't necessarily love this guy either, but I'm so sick of hearing people talk about Colin Kaepernick. My God. I mean, the guy, it feels like he hadn't played in 10 years. It's actually, what I read online is it's been 3. I would have never thought it's just 3 seasons.
He was a backup for a year in San Francisco.
Well, that's true, but it's like, it feels like, I mean, 3 years plus a year as a backup. Would any other quarterback be talked about this much? I get all the political drama around what was going on. I'm not saying I don't support what he was doing or that I do support what he was doing. It's more of, and it's not a personal thing at him. It's just, he's going to be 33 later this year. He hasn't played in essentially 4 seasons. Why do people keep bringing it up like, oh, well, somebody's going to sign this guy because he's just too talented not to play? He's talented. When he played, there were several quarterbacks that were better than him, and I'm talking about like his Super Bowl year. I didn't look at him and say, wow, that's a guy that should have at least 3 or 4 rings. I looked at him and I said, he's an above average quarterback in a league where quarterback play is very important, but I think everybody said he had his flaws. I mean, so I can only assume that it has to do with, it's just like I used to hear when I was in college and at Memphis State / University of Memphis, and a friend of mine was a trainer with the football team. And he said a phrase that I've heard many times uttered since: the most popular guy in town is the backup quarterback when your team is not playing well. And that team, the Memphis team, never played well in those days. A very successful season would have been 6-5. But the backup quarterback was always the most popular guy on the team because everybody was seeing it, all these crap quarterbacks we had, and saying, oh, the backup guy can't be any worse than this. Let's get him in there. Then he'd come in and suck. Then the third string quarterback now is the backup, and he's the most popular guy.
The Titans proved that wrong this year.
Well, I'm not saying the backups are always stinky.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, in Kaepernick's case, I mean, really, what team would he step in today and start from minute 1 and take that team from, because you got to figure a team who won 10 or more games last year is not going to replace their quarterback unless there's something weird going on. But what team is he going to step in that's below 500 last year, and he's going to make him into at least a playoff team. I don't know one. He might win them an extra game or two they wouldn't have won, and that's thinking of Kaepernick from 5 years ago.
Pretty much every team has set their quarterback now after the draft. The Chargers are pretty much going with Tyrod Taylor. The Panthers are going with Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, all those teams that were quarterback needy have kind of figured out at least a stopgap for the time being.
Well,
so
and
there's no spot
you
for
just
him.
brought up a good example. So Tyrod Taylor with the Chargers. Would you think, I mean, knowing that we're not coaches or part of the organization, would you think that Colin Kaepernick could walk in to training camp and beat Tyrod Taylor out for that job?
I mean, there's no way. I mean, Tyrod Taylor beat out Baker Mayfield in training camp a couple years ago, and Baker Mayfield was the number 1 pick. So Tyrod Taylor's also a playoff quarterback. I mean, he took the Bills to the playoffs a couple years ago. So
I mean, and all that said, I would not put Tyrod Taylor in the top 10 quarterbacks in the league.
yeah, I mean, I would put him.
I don't know if I'd put him in the upper half, but I'd certainly trust him to go out and run an offense better than Colin Kaepernick. Now, if you had Kaepernick as a backup and Tyrod Taylor steps in and he's 0-4 in his first 4 games, maybe you look to make a switch and say, well, we're already going nowhere. Let's see what we got in Kaepernick. Fine. Why would a team do that straight out of the gate? Why wouldn't they just wait until they're 0-2, 0-3? Because especially in a year like this, what good is a training camp or whatever a training camp looks like? What good is that going to do Kaepernick? I mean, I don't care how much he's been working out. Players talk all the time about game speed. He hadn't been working out at game speed.
Well, and I forgot that the Chargers did draft Justin Herbert, so he's.
I mean, even if they didn't,
yeah.
that's what I say. I don't see a situation Kaepernick walks in and you say he's instantly better than what we already have. I don't see one.
That will be an interesting.
And there's some bad
thing.
quarterbacks out there.
Yeah, I mean, that will be an interesting. Going back to the Chargers, that will be an interesting thing in training camp to see what happens there.
Yep.
Between Herbert, because apparently Anthony Lynn really likes Tyrod Taylor. So
well, we'll see
that's
how
for
that
time.
goes.
That's for a different time.
See if he gets beat out by another, top. What Herbert was 6th or 7th in the draft. Yeah. Top 6 or 7 pick in this case. So some sports topics we'll go through. So Carson, for starters, you and I both watched UFC 249. At least the main card. I think we watched a lot of the prelims
I think
too.
we watched most of the prelims.
And Money in the Bank. We watched that on Sunday night. So which event was better or worse in your estimation, and why?
My favorite out of the two was Money in the Bank because of some of the results that happened. UFC 249 was supposed to be this loaded card, especially the main card. I mean, Cowboy Cerrone was on the undercard. That's how loaded it was supposed to be. But the problem was it started off really slow and barely picked up. It only picked up near the end. I mean, there was no fights ended by stoppage except for like the very first prelim fight that we saw, which ended in the 3rd round in stoppage due to a doctor's stoppage until, well, I think it was Ngannou that won in 20 seconds. That's when it really started to pick up. It really only picked up for the last 3 fights. So the last 3 fights were really good. I mean, they were expected to be because it was Ngannou knocks out Jairzinho Rosenstrike in 20 seconds, which was ridiculous.
Right.
And then it was Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz. Cejudo retains the title and then retires after a second round stoppage. And then the last fight was a 5th round stoppage, but it was exciting the entire time because, I mean, Tony Ferguson was kind of getting the crap beaten out of him by Justin Gaethje, but Gaethje just couldn't put him down. That fight was actually a really great main event for a UFC event. So
right.
But
you're saying Money in the Bank.
Yeah, but Money in the Bank, the results of the fights, I liked pretty much all of them. I mean, McIntyre retains against Rollins, which was good for the time being, I think. McIntyre needs to retain for a while. And then, let's see, what was the other fight? Oh, Braun Strowman retains against Bray Wyatt in a really well-done fight, I thought. I think it builds the storyline for the future while not taking away from the present. And then, of course, Bayley retains against Tamina, which was expected. I mean,
so without going through every single fight, I mean, you're saying Money in the Bank is your favorite.
Yeah. Well, and then, of course, there's
Right, the actual
Money in the
Bank.
Those were probably the best part of the night, obviously, going through corporate headquarters. I mean, the surprise win for the men's was awesome with Otis winning without even having to climb a ladder.
Right.
With AJ Styles and his Butterfingers. I really thought that, WWE was just going to give it to AJ Styles after they got rid of his two Goonies, which would have been really bad, I think, because, AJ Styles is already an established star in WWE. He's been on the cover of a WWE game, so I don't think he really needs to win Money in the Bank.
Right.
So...
No, for my money, I agree. Money in the Bank was better. I've during this COVID issue, pandemic. I was gonna say issue. It's more than an issue. The pandemic. I really the parts I've liked best about the pay-per-views from WWE. Some of the events are just not good, but the ones they produce, I actually think they're on to something there. They are basically an entertainment company. So to be able to put entertainment like that together, yeah, I think that they should make more of that type of content.
The Boneyard match at WrestleMania was hands down maybe the best match at WrestleMania. Like, it was amazing. Also the Firefly Funhouse match. No, but then the women's one was also, the result was Asuka winning, which was kind of a surprise. We knew it was going to be a Raw woman because...
Well, the next night we saw why.
Yeah, but, it made a lot of sense for Asuka to win, obviously, being probably the second most talented woman on Raw right now, with Charlotte Flair kind of gone on NXT. But, so basically, should we go into what happened the next night on Raw?
Well, the high level of it is basically Becky Lynch came out and said, I'm pregnant, and she told Asuka, well, you getting Money in the Bank, here's the belt.
Yeah, it wasn't actually for a Money in the Bank contract, which is kind of disappointing, actually.
It was for the title.
Yeah, it was actually for the Raw Women's title. What I think they should have done, honestly, was it should have been like, oh, here, Becky, you can have the Money in the Bank contract, so whenever you want to come back, you have a Money in the Bank contract. That way, they could have made Becky that way she could come back at any time and basically be a champion again. So I thought that would have been more...
not a bad idea.
Yeah, but they just... It just kind of defeated the purpose of the Money in the Bank contract for the women. But Otis has the men's, so...
all the things you said. The Paul Heyman food fight was awesome.
Yeah.
I did not understand some reference. I asked a friend of the podcast, Brian, who was the guy that got the pie in the face from Otis. He didn't even know. And he's been watching WWE much longer than I have. So... some reference to somebody, I figured, oh, maybe it's a staffer who is getting rewarded for having a high performance appraisal, and they get to be on the production. I don't know, but it was fine. But the other things I would say is Money in the Bank. I don't mind a longer event necessarily when it's a pay-per-view, but that was a very nice length of event. Like 2 hours and 20 minutes was nice to know that it was over in that time. And on that, the flip side is UFC. You took way too long
because there's
to
30
get to
minutes
that last
in between
fight.
We started watching at like 6:30. We were watching until 12 o'clock.
Yeah,
until the Gaethje fight was over.
Which meant that where they were fighting in Florida, they weren't done till 1 a.m. That's I would have gotten it more if a crowd had been there, but there's no reason that you can't just bring the next fight on and get this done. The other piece of it is, and yeah, I paid for it, so I guess I can't complain too much, but, all of you at UFC, here's a big, quasi middle finger to you for not dropping your price on your pay-per-view at all. I paid $10 a month for WWE pay-per-view and got Money in the Bank. And I paid $65 to watch some of those fights be just flat awful. Now, I agree with Carson. The last 3 fights, especially the last 2, were really good. And I liked, the 20-second knockout because it's okay to see a fight like that once in a while.
I think that Cejudo versus Cruz was, could have gone longer even, but I mean, that fight might have an asterisk on it, like I said before, like I've told you before. I think that because Cruz was technically still moving, Cruz definitely had a problem with the ref after that fight, but it was still a really good fight, even if it did end in the second round. So,
right. So next topic, and I'll pose some questions to you after I lay this out. So, news was announced yesterday and continued into today. Major League Baseball has a proposal to get going that the owners have signed off on. And big shocker, pregnant pause here, wait for it. Speculation is that the players are going to hate it. Of course they are. Because what would baseball be without a little labor strife, huh? But anyway, so assuming that that comes through in this form, it would start in early July, preceded by some spring training-esque activity in home ballparks with no preseason games, and it would obviously pertain to those states and cities where there's not a completely restrictive order in place. So they talked about 82-game season, 14 playoff teams instead of 10, universal designated hitter for this season only, and then you'd play your divisional game, your teams in your division, and then you'd also play your interleague game, your other games against interleague of the same area. So if you were NL Central, you play the NL Central teams, and you play the AL Central teams as your other opponents. I didn't read as deep into what the split might be, but and then expanded rosters with the ability to use minor leaguers. Like the rosters would be 30 all the way up to 50, which essentially kills the minor league season. So I get why they have to do that. The minor league
season is basically dead.
Yeah, and I get that.
It's dead in the water.
But the big deal, of course, money. There's a proposed 50-50 revenue split, which the players will say no to because it's an uncapped sport. It's the only major sport that's uncapped in this country. They're going to say no. So a lot to unpack here, but let's just do three.
Is the MLS capped in this? Is the MLS capped?
I don't know, but I don't consider that a major sport. If we're in Europe and it's Premier League
it's
or
uncapped,
Bundesliga.
yeah, it's uncapped in Europe and international soccer.
But those are real soccer leagues. MLS, let's face it, it's minor league.
Mm-hmm.
Lot to unpack, but let's just do three questions that I'll pose to both of us. First off, you buy or sell this deal?
I guess I'll buy it just to get baseball back. I do love the designated or the universal designated hitter. I've been wanting that for as long as I've been watching baseball, especially being an NL team.
Do that permanently.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a good a good segue into doing that for all time. Especially being an NL fan, I have to watch pitchers bat all the time, and it's awful. Especially in playoff games when your team, when even your hitters can't get a hit, especially your pitchers definitely aren't. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, on a side note to this, I will say that I'll buy this deal because I'm not a player. I'm not an owner. I want to see baseball. And I think this, at a high level, makes sense. I'm sure the devil's in the details. But as a side note, today to ESPN, Mark Teixeira, former player, who in his playing career made $200 million plus. So I wouldn't call him a low-income guy or a end-of-the-roster guy. He said, in his opinion, it should be approved by the players and put through now so that baseball can happen. His quote was, "Players need to understand that if they turn this deal down and shut the sport down, they're not making a cent. I would rather make pennies on the dollar and give hope to people and play baseball than not make anything and lose an entire year off their career," unquote. I completely agree with that logic. And another thing, I think it was either in CBS Sports or ESPN, one of the columnists or commentators was saying, if baseball, just in general, let's say it wasn't the players or it was the owners, whoever it was, it could be the umpires, someone rejects this deal harshly and they spend weeks at the table negotiating, and they come out with an even shorter season or nothing at all. What do you think that's going to really look like? I mean, in my lifetime, I've seen several baseball stoppages. And I tell you, the one that stands out in my mind the most was the lockout of 94. And I can tell you why. It's because there were several teams that year that, and this is before we had all the wild card type playoffs. It was just ALCS, NLCS, and the World Series. But there were teams in the league that were really good that year that when baseball got shut down at the end of August, I mean, everybody was thinking, oh, this is probably going to be a week or two. They'll be back, so on and so forth. Nope, not back. Totally screwed some teams. But I will say that myself and some other friends of mine who had been diehard baseball fans through high school, and that was getting into my early college days, we didn't watch it for years afterwards. And I think it was lost until what became first the home run era, then known as the steroids era. So if baseball really wants to try to have, to continue having fans besides just the deep state fans, you can't have labor stoppages every 5 to 10 years. You just can't.
Well, there hasn't been one in a while until now,
which I think is why people think is going to happen.
Which is a special circumstance. So
I mean, so the next question about this: assume this deal does happen this way, and baseball starts around July 4th. What's the percentage chance? And this could be related not just to the league. This could be related to the coronavirus or anything. What's the % chance you believe that we make it all the way through to a World Series champion? Knowing that in that season, we'd probably be crowning a World Series champ in November for sure, and maybe even early December is what people are saying. What do you think the % chances we get all that way with all the talk of second wave of coronavirus?
50-50 shot. I mean, it really depends on like the precautions that the league takes, I think, which baseball, like I said last time we recorded, might have the easiest path back to playing from safety precautions, but it's still not an easy one. I don't know. It's tough to say right now, honestly.
I hear you. I put it lower.
Yeah.
I'd say 30% chance we get all the way through it. And I don't think if that's the case, I don't think that's going to be baseball's fault.
And even if we don't, we'd still get some baseball if this deal were to go through like this.
Well, sure.
I don't care. Now, for me, the only good thing about the season not coming back at all or not even starting at all would be that the Dodgers get completely screwed with Mookie Betts and he doesn't play a single game for them and leaves in free agency. That would be the silver lining for me on the cake.
Well, since you threw that out there, let's actually ask. I'm going to ask a question, and this is, of course, totally irrational, way too early type guess. But let's ask a question. Let's assume this deal kick goes through, 82-game season, all that stuff. And this will not be related to the coronavirus. Who you got winning each league right now? Who would you guess based off player movement and who's who is going to win each league? I'm going to let you give an answer.
Dodgers win NL, Yankees win AL.
And who wins that series?
Dodgers.
Okay. If you said the Yankees, we're stopping right now.
Well, I mean, they're kind of loaded right now. Especially with this, Luis Severino, well, I guess he's out for the season anyway, but still, he got Tommy John right before the season was supposed to start. So
I mean, I will say that if they go with this kind of season and a 14-team expanded playoff field, you got a lot more chance of somebody getting hot at the right time.
Like the Rays last year almost did, or the Cardinals until they shut down in the NL. I
mean, it's like when the NBA's first round used to be 5-game series, not 7. You had a lot better chance of somebody knocking somebody off, getting hot for a few games. So, I mean, and that's why in the NCAA basketball tournament, when it ever happens, it's one and done. All you need is 40 good minutes.
Yeah.
And for 6
or one
times.
player to go off.
Yeah.
It's like Dante DiVincenzo. That's why he was a first-round pick.
So, all right, so one more sports topic. NFL. And this is very specific. Who's sick of hearing about Tampa Bay yet?
Everybody.
Dun, 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 dun. I'm sick of hearing about them. So, you know what? I kind of took a peek at their schedule because I'm thinking, okay, Brady at age 2,000, Gronk coming back. They already had, granted, their 1-2 punch of wide receivers is really good.
Yeah.
And they've got
tight ends,
weapons.
They have 4 tight ends who could be starters on any team.
Right. So they got weapons.
Leggett, Brait.
And their defense isn't horrible. They have some pieces. But I mean, I've heard all their player movement and all this stuff, and I still don't, without looking at the schedule first, I still don't hear everything they've done and go, oh wow, 12-4, 13-3, NFC South champs, at least to the NFC title game. I don't hear that. I mean, playoff team, maybe. Home game, no way. So I figured let's do a walkthrough of their schedule. So Carson and I will just call out with each game whether we think it's a win or a loss. Week 1 at New Orleans, loss. Week 2 at home versus Carolina,
win. Panthers are going to be really with Teddy Two Gloves.
Don't let Zachary hear you say that.
Yeah, with Teddy Two Gloves.
I'm going to say win. So Tom Brady gets a win in his first game at home. At Denver,
win.
Loss.
They'll have a rookie. Well, they'll have effectively a rookie quarterback starting.
I give it a
Drew
loss.
Lock.
Partly
no
because
receivers.
Week 1 we're going to go to Denver, the Titans, and smash that ass. So by the time they get to Week 3, they'll be primed for a win.
The Broncos are not winning that game. I'm telling you now.
We'll see. So week 4 at home against the Chargers.
Win.
I give it a win.
Especially with a new quarterback. No matter who's starting for the Chargers, they're going to be the suck. So
Week 5 at Chicago.
Win.
Loss.
Against Chicago.
I give it a
with
loss.
With Nick Foles or
Big
Mitchell
Dick Nick.
Trubisky.
Yeah. He'll win.
But what did they start Trubisky out there? And they're losing every game.
I'm assuming, I'm hoping against hope that Foles makes it to Week 5 without spraining a hair or something like that.
The Bears are not winning that game either.
Week 6, home versus Green Bay.
Loss. Packers are too good.
Week 7, at the Raiders in Las Vegas.
Win.
Loss.
With Derek Carr or Marcus Mariota, who we've seen plenty of over his career.
I'm not
Both
thinking
those
of
quarterbacks
the quarterback.
are terrible.
I'm thinking they're going to run all over him. Tom Brady won't have the ball. Week 8 at the Giants. That's a win.
That's a win.
Week 9 home against the Saints.
That's a loss.
Loss.
Saints are going to smoke them both times.
Sean Payton will make it his personal mission to not let Tom Brady win this division. Week 10 at Carolina.
Win.
Loss.
The Panthers are not winning either of these games. I'm sorry to tell you.
I'll give them a home win against Tampa
They
Bay.
might. Okay, maybe they steal this game away at home, away from the Bucs, but I just don't see it. I think their offensive line is not as good as it has been in past years for the Panthers. Even as good as McCaffrey is, they're still starting Teddy Two Gloves.
Well, I will say that up to this point, I mean, I could totally see Tampa making it to maybe 7-3 by this point. Oh, great. It's a great start. Now the good news of the next 3 games, they're all in Tampa. The bad news is you get the Rams. Okay. Good, not great. What do you give that one?
Win for the Bucs. Against the Rams?
I give them a win.
The Rams sucked last year.
Okay, then home against Kansas City.
That is a fat loss for the Bucs right there.
Totally. Then home against Minnesota.
Loss.
Then, and I don't know how the hell they got this. This is totally like Tom Brady called up the league office. Week 15, 16, and 17. At Atlanta, at Detroit, home against Atlanta. Are you kidding me?
3 wins in a row.
If they can't go at least 2-1 in those 3 games, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. So what'd you have as their final record?
11-5.
Oh my gosh.
Listen, there was
Carson got them close.
Listen,
but do they win the division or the Saints win it?
I think the Saints will win it still. Listen, this is my argument. The Patriots won 12 games last year with Tom Brady at the helm with much worse receivers. Now, I don't think Tom Brady is nearly as good as he used to be. And I don't think that he can single-handedly carry a team. But look at his receiving threats. And their defense was actually pretty good last year in Tampa Bay. So I can't see this team losing more than 5 games.
Here's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer this. So, how many dirty looks or comments about how somebody's not doing what they're supposed to be doing does he make in game 1 and the over-under is 8.5. I take the over.
Yeah, I'll take the over on that.
Heavy action on the over.
Yeah.
So, moving on to pop culture. So, I just decided to pull, 3 random articles that I found and say, let's get your reaction on this. God. I know you've seen this movie, but it might have been a while for you. But sports movies you generally keep a good mind of. So, you remember seeing Varsity Blues? You saw it.
I think, yeah. Is that the basket?
No, it's football. You're already wrong. It's set in Texas. John Voight's the evil coach. Who doesn't come out of the locker room. Well, they don't take him out of the locker room after halftime.
I don't think I've seen this movie
You have seen it. Anyway, so, well, if you haven't, we're going to watch it. It has big old Billy Bob.
Oh, yeah. I think I've seen
that movie. They go to the strip joint.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Really
you need to watch it again. So, I found it funny that James Vanderbeek, who plays star quarterback, Moxon, I think it's Johnny Moxon, that not Moxley, John Moxon. He takes over for the deceased Paul Walker, actor Paul Walker, but he plays Lance Harbor, who tears up a knee. And so Moxon comes in and saves the team and blah, blah, blah. But it's basically like the MTV version of Friday Night Lights. But James Vanderbeek, I will totally respect this guy because he's about my age. He watched that movie with his kids. He has 5 kids, and they relentlessly roasted him while watching that movie, he said, over his crappy Texas accent. One of his kids said, I hate that accent. And they also said, you said shit. And he said, yeah, the character said it. And they said, but you said shit. So if I was ever a movie star, I would totally be like, yeah, I'm going to watch movies with my kids and me and listen to them roast me because I know this one sitting across from me would. And I know his brother would too.
Yeah.
So here's the next article. I know you've seen Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
And
twice
you're a big
now.
fan of it.
Yeah, I like that movie.
So remember, if you will, what's the reason they say the first drummer died?
Is that the one who exploded on stage?
No, that's the third
Or the
one.
gardening accident?
The bizarre gardening accident.
The authorities said it's best to just leave it
unsolved.
Alone.
So, article to the headline. I'm just going to say the headline. Queen guitarist, so it's the band Queen. Mm-hmm. Queen guitarist reveals he ripped buttock muscle in, quote, over-enthusiastic gardening, unquote. Even the writers of the article didn't know what over-enthusiastic gardening meant.
Did he fall back on his butt? Well,
I have no idea. We're not going to delve into it.
Oh, too bad it's not the drummer of Queen.
Yeah,
it would be
Eric
even better.
Stumpy Joe Childs. So, and the last one. This is more. I'm going to read it to you, and this is actually from The Onion, so it's going to be goofy.
Oh, excellent!
Your horoscope for this week. So Carson's birthday is July 5th. So he's a Cancer. So his horoscope reads, you had no idea the love life of the nut batch was so vigorous, so obsessive, and so likely to result in the death of people like yourself who just like to watch birds do it. So that's your horoscope. Let's see what mine says. My birthday is December 1st. I'm a Sagittarius. Home is where your heart is, and your lungs and liver too. But despite a month-long search, they'll never find all of you. That's my horoscope.
Wow.
So
excellent.
Yeah, moving on. I mean, it's quality content. How can you not like that? So moving on to, we're into the Arnold-verse now.
Good.
Movie number 4 of the Arnold Schwarzenegger Pantheon. Brief recap, we're watching 8 Schwarzenegger movies. Loved his movies as a kid. We're not going to watch the Conan movies because those are kind of meh. And we're definitely not watching Red Sonja because he was not the billed star, even though he's big in it. But none of the sword swashbuckling movies. We're watching the shoot 'em ups. So,
which is most of them.
Yeah, and mostly from the 80s, getting into the early 90s a bit. So we've already watched. Can you remember them?
We started off with Commando, went to Running Man. Then went to Predator, great movie, and then we went to Raw Deal.
Heartwarming story of former quote, heavy-handed, unquote, FBI agent turned small-town sheriff turned mafia annihilator turned FBI agent. Raw deal.
It is a little bit heartwarming, especially at the end. I would agree with that statement.
So it came out in June of 1986. Was directed by John Irvin, that's with an I, who was so vain that he put his last name on the oil company or whatever that got blown up in the middle. He directed a bunch of things when I looked at his IMDb, most of which I'd never really heard of, but this was the first in a threesome of movies that I've seen several times and thought, it's okay, they're entertaining. He followed this up with Hamburger Hill, which was a more low-budget Vietnam movie in the wake of Platoon. And then Next of Kin with SNL Chippendale dancer and Roadhouse man candy Patrick Swayze. And a also relatively unknown at the time Liam Neeson in that movie. Playing like a backwoods American. I mean, totally, hopelessly miscast. That's for you, Brian.
Yeah.
So,
Dracula.
$8.5 million budget, made $16 million in the U.S. So I'd take a $7.5 million profit, but apparently that wasn't good enough to save the production company, which went under after this movie.
$7.5 million.
25% on Rotten Tomatoes. Oof.
Yeah.
Not exactly the greatest of scores on Metacritic either. Got an average score of 44. And it's kind of that way with Predator last time, but that was a spread all across the board. There were hundreds and there were zeros. In this case, the highest score you can find is a 63. Bill Cosford of the Miami Herald said, "It helps that Raw Deal works, for a time at least, as a first-rate cop movie. It is violent to excess, more graphic by far than Stallone's films, and bloodier too, but it's a real movie." Not exactly a ringing endorsement there, Billy.
Graphic?
Well, a lot of people said it was very bloody in their comments. I'm not sure why. There's worse.
Predator was 50 times worse
realize this did come a year before
know,
Predator.
But still, this movie is not graphic. And if they saw some of the stuff that came out today, they would really not like it.
So
I think that if this movie came out now, it would have much higher ratings because, graphic scenes aren't really a problem anymore.
We're desensitized to it. Gene Siskel of famous Siskel and Ebert, with the Chicago Tribune, gave it a 25. The film's biggest continuing laugh is the very idea that Arnold Schwarzenegger, with his thick accent, could infiltrate the upper echelon of the mafia. I could see him catering a German mob dinner, but a trusted ally, never. So, good comments there, Gene.
That does make sense. I understand that.
Oh, yeah.
That critique on the movie. It does make sense. You could say that about any Schwarzenegger movie, basically, except for Terminator.
Right. So, yeah, but because it's like
Terminator
Sean
doesn't
Connery.
matter.
He goes in with his voice. He's not changing his voice for you. So
I wonder if Schwarzenegger can do an American accent.
Oh, you can probably try. So Nick Riganus, I'm probably mispronouncing that, from IMDb, put in a basic plot. Dishonored and forcibly retired from the FBI on grounds of excessive brutality, former agent Mark Kaminsky is now reduced to a small-town sheriff. However, when Chief Harry Shannon, an old friend from the Bureau whose son Blair was murdered by the mob, turns to Mark for help, the tough sheriff, who is always ready for action, will see this offer as a chance to his reinstatement. In this deadly and unofficial assignment, Mark has to infiltrate Luigi Petrovita's powerful mob family to tear it apart, while forcing his way through the crime organization as the mysterious Joseph P. Brenner. Now he has to stay away from the law without blowing his cover, but is it wise to give Mark a raw deal?
Oh, that was disgusting.
Yeah. Hey, that's on IMDb. I didn't make that up. So, overall impressions. I'll let you go first.
I enjoyed the movie. I don't understand why it got a 25%.
I always liked it as a kid.
Yeah, I thought, honestly, I think this is better. If I'm going back and thinking about my movies...
Don't you say it's better than Commando.
I think I've been a little too kind with some of my ratings for some of these movies. So, I think that it's better than Running Man.
Agreed.
I think it's about the same as Commando.
Okay.
Obviously worse than Predator. Predator's obviously in the upper echelon of Schwarzenegger movies, so
There's better, but it's up there.
I know, but well, I mean, in cult classic, like in the amount of people who still love Predator, it's probably really high up there.
Well, like I said, I mean, Predator,
Terminator
was greeted with mixed reviews at the
but
time.
now it's
like a cult classic.
I mean, like I said last week,
Raw Deal just
got
bad reviews then and now. Apparently,
yeah, people just still don't like it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was entertaining, and the dad from A Christmas Story's in there, so it made it much better.
Exactly, and he didn't talk about anything fragile.
Yeah, which was disappointing.
I mean, some other things. I mean, the music. I was never crazy about the music in this movie, except one notable exception is I always thought it was a cool choice. I'm not a country music guy, but I always thought it was a cool choice when the opening song during the credits. So they go through, the son gets killed, this witness gets killed, and then, Christmas Story dad, Darren McGavin, shows up and he's like, whatever it takes, these guys, they're dead.
It's his son that got killed.
And then they pan away, they go away from that, and you start to hear a Ricky Skaggs song. I think it's called One Way Rider. And that's when Kaminsky, played by Schwarzenegger, is chasing a cop impersonator. So, like I said, it's really not what I was expecting for the credits. When I was young, it was kind of like, okay, I didn't really pay attention. But I thought it was a cool choice. Kind of like, okay, now we're really getting it slapped in our face that he's in the backwoods.
Yeah, I thought that scene was pretty well done to play him off like he was a backwoods country boy.
Right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I mean, there are not a lot of memorable one-liners in this movie. There's a few, but I mean, when your middle initial is P and you say it stands for pussy, I mean, that's, how can you go wrong with a line like that?
That's part of my favorite
scene.
Favorite string of scenes, I guess.
Yeah, from beginning to end. But the script overall, it could have used a rewrite. I mean, apparently there were a lot of scripts for this movie running around, and one of the initial titles of this movie was called "Let's Make a Deal." If they had done that, I mean, the sequel would be Family Feud or something like that.
It probably would have gotten a 10% just because of the rating,
right?
Just because of the title. Now I feel like if this movie was rewritten today, it has a pretty good premise, like the base story, and if it had a different lead actor who maybe was more suited for the role, I think it could be actually a really good movie.
How dare you question Schwarzenegger's casting? Yeah, go ahead. Dig yourself out of that hole. Yeah, come on. How dare you?
I think he's great in other movies.
Whatever.
I thought that he was good in this one, but I think that obviously a lot of these movies he was put in the lead role because of money.
Well, yeah, he was a movie star.
Yeah.
There's also, as you noted when watching it too, there's some, just like in many of his other movies, there's some classic bad guy deaths in this movie. I mean, if I get shot and I have a pistol in my hand, I'm not like taking the time to throw it in the air and then sort of crumple down to the ground. I mean, I'm just going to fall over.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
They all fall backwards. Some people fall forwards when they die because you get shot and you go like this and then you fall like, it's just, the angles don't make any sense. It's bad.
Well, and it's also probably, it's one of the movies where I've seen the most people get shot in jean jackets. A lot of guys get shot in denim.
Construction site.
Yeah, there's a lot of denim
Some guy
shootings.
got crushed into like a rock breaker.
Yeah. So and I never understood that. You don't see how the guy...
He got shot and then fell into it. And it was just like crunching in on him. Like you never saw him get crushed.
It's a painful death if he's only wounded at that point.
Well, let's hope he was dead for his sake.
So... some interesting trivia that's all on IMDb as well. So, which, we didn't do this for the other movies, but I figure it's worth, throwing a few of those out there. One of them talks about originally intended to be called Let's Make a Deal. Yeah. So Arnold Schwarzenegger only agreed to star in this movie after he haggled in exchange to dissolve his multi-picture agreement with Dino De Laurentiis, who had done Conan movies and some other productions. So he had one movie left after that with the dissolving of the agreement. He was very interested in doing Total Recall, but Dino De Laurentiis objected, he had already cast Patrick Swayze for that role as Quaid in Total Recall. But then what ended up happening, I don't know all the details, but De Laurentiis went bankrupt and Total Recall got sold to Carolco Production, which essentially was Schwarzenegger as a backer. So
Schwarzenegger got his role.
Schwarzenegger did say in an interview to promote the film that this was the first one where he got to wear an elaborate and modern wardrobe. He said that before this film, his wardrobe budget had been about $10. So, I mean, he definitely dresses up in some suits in this movie. There are some questionable suit choices from some of the other people, but
he wears some pretty slick suits in this one, I will say. I agree. Since he did have like $45,000, his character did, to buy whatever he wanted, basically. So
the rock quarry scene was shot at Rogers Group's Pilot Knob plant in Gallatin, Tennessee. So about 3.5 hours from here.
We can go visit it, see where.
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
There was a couple others in here that were somewhat interesting. Yeah, that one's not. Anyway, so. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. I thought one of the lines you'd like is, when she says losing improves your character, and he says winning improves your wardrobe.
That was a good one.
And then he buys her clothes later.
Yeah.
How about that, huh?
Well, and then
alluding to the future.
Yeah, he gives her $1,000 in chips also,
and she loses it, of course. So, anyway, let's move on to the quick fire categories. So, best scene.
I thought it was the string of like where he first meets Rocca and is in Rocca's office, or Roca or whatever his name is. Like that whole exchange, and then going into the alleyway and getting like almost mugged by Keller's men, and then the cop coming in and him telling him that his middle name was, Or I thought the very last scene where Darren McGavin was like trying to learn how to walk again because he got shot.
The heartwarming moment.
That part was that's where it actually got heartwarming.
Yeah.
I felt that it actually stuck true to that description. So
to me, the best scene is still when he goes to the pit, the quarry, and shoots everybody up there
while in a car.
Yeah, I mean it's Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones playing. He almost gets crushed between two cars, and he only makes it out with the one rifle. But somehow, by the time he goes to
the shotgun is
the mob hotel, he's got everything again. So
I mean, you could make the case that they fell out of the car after they got crushed and were on the ground or something.
Possibly. Okay.
I don't know.
Worst acting.
I said it was the guy who played Marvin Baxter.
Oh.
The lawyer.
That guy, Joe Regalbuto, I think is how you say his name.
I don't know.
Yeah, he was on the big thing I saw him back in the 80s, and maybe it was the 90s too, was Murphy Brown. He was on the Murphy Brown show on CBS, which lasted several seasons. I don't remember what part he played.
I mean, I don't know if he meant to have his character like that, but he was very spastic.
I've seen him in some other movies. Yeah, he was definitely going for it. So
yeah, I don't.
The overacting award goes to him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, since he tried to. That's a plot hole in the movie too, where he tried to kill himself with a gun, but then he's given a gun with bullets in it, and he doesn't kill himself.
Well, he ends up dead.
So
worst acting to me is, and I hate to say it, buddy, was Stephen Hill, who played Lemansky.
Wait, who? Which one is that?
The guy that he goes after initially to get the attention of Petrovita. He takes the jewelry from the guy's girlfriend and all that. He's playing golf and throws the club. Yeah. Stephen Hill. I used to love watching that guy on Law and Order when he played the New York DA. But I realized in watching this movie and then thinking of him in that role, he's so good in Law and Order because he doesn't have to do a whole lot. He was very deadpan. This movie, he's going for it, and it's just not good. Sorry, buddy.
I didn't even think.
And I actually thought the females in this movie were good. I mean, I wouldn't give any of them an Oscar, but compared to some of the others.
They were amazing compared to some of the others relative to the others.
In most of the movies we have left, the females are very good in those movies.
In Terminator, you could say that the female is much better than Schwarzenegger.
You're giving away content early here. Okay? If you're good at something, never do it for free.
Well,
anyway. Oh, wait, this is free. Best thing about the movie?
Best thing about the movie was that the dad from A Christmas Story was in it.
Okay.
And then it actually, I also said that it was actually kind of heartwarming. That was one of my things because it was, I don't know, it actually did have a plot that made you want to root for Schwarzenegger and actually complete his goals. So,
yeah, I mean, best thing about the movie to me was Max Keller, played by the immortal Robert Davi. I think is how you say his last name. I mean, that guy's played so many bad guys, and so many jerks. I mean, he basically just plays, the same thing in all these movies, but like when he's Special Agent Johnson in Die Hard, such just an unredeemable prick, and that's what he is in this movie. So, and he's standing over there at which you don't really know until at the end when Petrovita gets shot, and you notice that this giant bowl in Rocca's office is like pills. It's like not candy, it's pills. It's all these different colors, and I'm like, okay. At first I'm thinking, did they go to a Dr. Mario convention or something? But then you look at it, it's Mario. Is this like the early onset of oxycodone and all that kind of stuff? I don't know. But Max Keller's sitting over there popping pills when,
thought it was candy.
Joseph Pussy Brenner walks in the office the first time.
It was M&M's.
No. Worst thing about the movie?
Worst thing about the movie? I don't know. It has, like every Schwarzenegger movie pretty much, it has lots of plot holes. I think that's just, it just has them. That they're just a given.
Well, yeah. Worst thing about the movie to me is certain aspects of the direction, like slow motion at just dumb times. Why? And the way that some of these scenes were shot is just ridiculously bad. I also say with the plot holes too. I mean, they
just need to find better script writers for these Arnold Schwarzenegger movies because some of them were not very good at their job.
Yeah. Most memorable thing?
I don't know. I guess kind of that the females were not extremely terrible and that there weren't. I mean, in this movie, relative to other ones, there wasn't a ton of obvious terrible acting. I mean, as a cast overall,
right? Not
just the females. I mean,
most memorable thing to me was this seemed like, and I mentioned this to you when we watched it. This seems like the movie where Schwarzenegger actually gets punched the most.
Yeah,
I'm sure somebody would be able to say, "Oh no, he got punched 2 more times than that in this other movie."
I mean, in Predator, he got hit a lot because I mean he's facing a freaking alien by himself. So
yeah, but this movie, every fight he's in, he gets punched. It seems like
he still never gets shot though.
He got shot.
Did he?
Yes, in the mob bar in the bottom of the hotel. You see a notable spot where he gets shot in the arm. I'll let you go back and see it.
Yeah, I don't remember that, honestly.
Okay, overall rating out of 4 stars.
I gave it a 2.5 out of 4.
Okay, that's what I would give it.
Due to plot holes, and like you said, I kind of did notice the music, like, strange at some points. Honestly, I mean,
it's like it was trying to be dark and foreboding.
Yeah, but it was still entertaining, and I thought that some of the layers on some of the characters was really interesting, like Darren McGavin's character, who was basically spending his life savings to find his son's killers and kill them. So
right, I gave it 2.5. Also, I've watched the movie a bunch of times. I always liked that it was a bit different. It wasn't like he was part of an army unit or something like that.
He was part of the FBI who got kicked out.
Was going into a mob type circle to get people, but there's
like holes I said, I think that with better writing, this movie would be a lot better.
So okay. So anyway, we're done. Hope you enjoyed it. Anybody who was willing to give us a listen, wish Carson good luck this week. He's taking his AP US History exam on Friday, so
I guess it'll be me wishing myself good luck.
You must pass. So. give yourself at least 3 stars out of 5 on that.
Yeah.
And give us a like, dislike, comments, shares, whatever on YouTube. Stay well, stay safe. Thanks for the time.
Goodbye.
And we'll talk to you guys later.